Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to have back on the show human trafficking, satanic ritual abuse, and Jesuit mind control survivor and whistleblower, writer and author, mother, educator, blogger, and one of the most requested podcast guests on this platform, Svali. A short overview of Svali's life in case you've missed her incredible two-part testimony series she did on this channel. Svali has been a voice for survivors for years now through her blogs, Svali Speaks and Svali Speaks Again, and the books she has authored, including Breaking Free of Cult Programming, which has helped lay the foundations for what we know today about cults, trauma-based mind control, deprogramming, secret societies, including the Jesuit order, the history of the Illuminati, and so much more, as well as her brand new two-part testimony series, Never Give Up, Parts 1 and 2, which give a first-time deep dive into Svali's own testimony in life. Born and raised in a cult group and having experienced horrors beyond comprehension, Svali broke free of her cult group several years ago and has been on a quest to share the knowledge that she has learned from personal experience to help set other captives free. There are years of eye-opening information on her blogs, and her books give a very concise and no-nonsense look at the underworld of mind control and the underlying mechanisms to which it is orchestrated, used generationally, and hidden from society. Svali has been on this show multiple times, and each time she comes on, she offers incredible insights into the shadow systems and networks that orchestrate the underworld of organized child trafficking, and her unmatched ability to articulate how trauma through dissociation affects a survivor and how to heal from it have made a tremendous impact in the survivor and therapeutic communities over the decades, helping us to understand these complex horrors that can be impossible to comprehend otherwise. The last time Svali was on, we shared her testimony in two parts, which was a phenomenal overview of her life that preceded her new book release of her testimony of two parts, Never Give Up, the autobiography of a survivor of ritual abuse and mind control, and Never Give Up, Part 2, The Struggle. Before her testimonial episodes, Svali has also been on the podcast to present on topics such as programming, deprogramming, secret societies, systems and parts, healing, and her walk with God. If you haven't watched her previous episodes, I'd highly recommend going back and checking them out. Each episode shines a bright light on the darkness of our world, and I'll have her playlist in the show notes for you all to check out. This time around, Svali will be talking about a new topic we haven't had a deep dive into on this channel yet, which is Alice in Wonderland programming. Victims of trauma-based mind control have prevention in place within their system to help keep amnesic walls up. One of the major programs used to do this is Alice in Wonderland programming. Svali will be presenting on how this programming was used on her and within the Jesuit cult group she was born into, as it's one of the most important topics regarding programming that isn't talked about nearly enough in the survivor community. And in typical Svali fashion, this episode will be jam-packed with information. So grab a pen and paper and give this brave warrior your full attention as we have the honor of learning more from this amazing woman whose example teaches us to never give up. Before I finish introducing today's guest, I wanted to give just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you'd like to be on the podcast as a guest, share any information privately with me, or submit a written testimony to be published in my upcoming book series or as an article on my Substack, you can email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com. I'm also proud to announce my new partnership with one of my personal favorite brands, Rife Technologies, which is a new and innovative company dedicated to revolutionizing the health tech industry. The real Rife machine is an electromagnetic radio frequency device engineered by scientist Dr. Royal Raymond Rife in the 1920s, used to address various health concerns. These technologies have been used in reference by many guests on this podcast as a healing modality, and I'm excited to announce that you can now gift yourself with 15% off your Rife Technologies order with the discount link and code I have posted in the show notes. All the rest of my links as well are in the show notes, and I'd love your support across all platforms. Thank you all for caring so deeply about survivors and whistleblowers, and for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor and whistleblower disclosures. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, woman of God, overcomer, walking miracle, survivor advocate, and someone who continues to help so many break free from cult programming by showing them what's possible. The one, the only, Svali. Svali, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, Emma, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm grateful to have you back. It's been a little while, and I was telling you whenever we before we started recording how ironic it was. Our last couple episodes together, we shared your testimony in a two-part series, and literally like a couple days after we got done recording, before your episodes even came out, you actually had a book series come out that we didn't even get to talk about on the interview just because we didn't know the exact date whenever it would be there. So I obviously have written Substack articles and I've shared your links everywhere, but I'd love to start. This is a huge accomplishment for you to finally have your testimony published, and part 2 just literally came out. I just got my copy and I have both. They're amazing. So I really want you to just talk a little bit about this, because I think we have a lot to learn from these books. It's not just your testimony, it's everything you've learned also. So I'd love you to share a little bit about this journey writing these books.
All right, I'll do that briefly because I have a lot to talk about with the Alice in Wonderland programming. I realized that a while back that, well, I can share some of my story on my blog, and in interviews there's so much backstory and information related to what I share that it would take weeks and weeks of of interviews to cover it all. I thought, I want to write a book that describes my life history that I've been remembering. So I did. I wrote volume 1 is the first 13 and a half years of my life. It starts from the time I was a tiny baby. And I mentioned prenatal programming too at the beginning, and the experiences of being programmed by the Jesuit order growing up. And I do it from a more personal view. Sometimes in my articles on my blog, I talk about programming somewhat impersonally, like, well, and they do this and they do this. But this was what happened to me. And I share some of the feelings too that I went through as well when I started to recover the memories. And so it shows kind of my memories and some of the backstory of how the programming was done, as well in an explanation section at the end of some of the chapters. And it ends with my marriage to Satan at age 13. And a lot of survivors I know have memories like that. And this is just where I describe mine. Then in book 2, the struggle, I talk about the years from 13 and a half until 2007. And in that, I describe my struggles to get out twice, getting reaccessed, the thinking behind some of the things that went on, my adult life in the group as well. I talk about the jobs I did. I talk about the effects of the early programming on me as an adult. And some of the programming I had to do, I talk about CERN and what we did there. I talk about some other things too. And the book actually ends in the year 2000 though, because that's when there was an event that profoundly impacted me and made me realize that I would have to leave. And I'm going to write a third book on when I actually got free, starting in 2007. And so that's what the books are about.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. We're not done yet. We have a part three. That's exciting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because part three, I want to show what happened when I really had physical safety for the first time in my life. Because that's when I really started. I remembered being part of the Jesuit order and other things. That's when the memories really start coming out.
And
Okay.
also, too, I know your walk with God happened in your healing journey too, more than
Yes.
you ever had in your life. And that would be really inspiring to learn more about that too.
Oh, yeah. So actually, part three is going to be the most hopeful because I show what it was like getting free. In fact, I'm going to call it getting free. Okay.
Super exciting. Well, you'll have to update us on when that's going to come out. But
Okay. I will. It'll be months from now.
yeah.
I'm going to be busy the next few months. Okay. But anyway, but today what I wanted to address was Alice in Wonderland programming. And the reason I wanted to do this is because it's a fairly common program in a lot of occultic societies. Now, not all occultic societies do it the same way. So if there's a therapist or supporter listening, or even a survivor who's saying, well, I've got it, but it's not like she's talking about, that's true. Because different societies use this program in different ways. And there are some occultic societies that don't do Alice programming at all. They do some of them like are more of a paganistic earth thing. So they'll have something to do with sprites and druids and trees and things like that. Or they might have like even a circle of earth stories or different stories for amnesia. But so I'm just describing how it was done in the Jesuit order. There is quite a bit of overlap with how the Illuminati also do it. Other occultic groups will do it, but they may not do it as extensively or in the same manner. Okay, I just want to say that right off. But what it is it's what I call a presenter program. And what I mean by presenter is the person who's out in front. And it is for the non-cult presenters. The cult presenters have their own programs to help that they go through. Okay. But for the non-cult presenters, or the daytime or front or apparently normal parts, go through Alice in Wonderland programming. And the reason they go through it is to protect the cult by hiding its existence in daily life, to protect the cult agendas by hiding the fact that the person is being abused or exploited or used against their will. In other words, the goal of Alice in Wonderland programming is for the non-cult presenters to have no awareness that any cult abuse occurred. So the purpose is to hide the cult's existence and its abuse of its members, including children. And that's one thing that enables the cults to continue doing their criminal activities. Because if you have no awareness in your daily life that you're a cult member, then you're hiding its existence. So presentation programming, such as Alice in Wonderland, is designed to enable the person to hide the cult and the cult's abuse of them and other people. Now, in the Jesuits and in the Illuminati, Alice in Wonderland is an overarching program which enforces the presentation programming. And to hide the cult and the fact that the person was abused by the cult, the program has 4 goals or purposes: to make the person have amnesia to their cult memories and their cult skills. So it's to prevent them remembering, for instance, that a ritual occurred the night before, or that they actually know how to do advanced martial arts, or to prevent them recognizing a cult member at the supermarket that they don't consciously know in their daytime presentation life. Another goal is to make the person have amnesia between parts that come out in different countries. So the American presenters are not allowed to remember how to speak French. The German presenters are not allowed to remember their families in the UK or how to speak English. So it creates barriers between the various presentations, because it's not uncommon in occultic societies, especially the very large organized ones, for people to have more than one presentation in more than one country. Like the Illuminati will often have a European presentation, as well as even if the child is living in the US part of the time. Okay. And another goal is to make the person be unaware of their own dissociation, to not be aware of other parts inside. So it's supposed to make the part presenting believe that they are the only part inside, that there's no other parts. And then another goal is to make the person keep their presentation profile. And other programs help with this. So in other words, the programmers will give each presenter a particular personality type and set of preferences. So for instance, in France, an individual might be outgoing and chatty and have a loving family, whereas in the UK, they might be angry and rebellious and acting out. And whereas in the United States, that person might be shy and retiring and socially withdrawn and have difficulty making friends. And the programmers do this purposely because they believe in balancing the presentations. Well, at least in the Jesuits, they did. And so, or even like if a person is able to fight back when they're bullied at school, that's part of their presenter profile. Or whether they like to dress frilly and feminine or stylish or as a tomboy, that's part of their profile that they were programmed with in their presentation in groups that do this type of programming. So because of this, all the characters and scenarios in Alice in Wonderland will revolve around enabling parts to do one of these four things and rewarding the parts for doing one or more of these four goals and punishing them for failing to do one of these four things. And again, not all cults use it. Not all use it to reinforce presentation programming as strongly as the Jesuits do. But since all cults generally need to hide their existence and their abuse of its members, there will usually be some form of presenter amnesia programming, and other programs are responsible for enforcing that programming. Okay, in the Jesuit programming, you will have a shell, and you will have a shell controller, and you will have a part that interacts with the shell controller and that interacts in the Jesuits, it's a delta system for memory storage as well. And so those are all parts of the presentation programming too. But I'm just going to discuss Alice programming now, and I'll describe the parts in it. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Exact. That was all I was asking.
Sure. So the Jesuits start Alice in Wonderland programming prenatally. And so when the fetus is in the womb, the first part that will be split is Alice, and she is the primary presentation amnesia controller. And she's what is known as a believe part. All the way down to core level, the programmers in the Jesuit order create parts that are just called believe parts, and their only job is to believe everything the programmers tell them. Okay? So she is a believe part who controls the presentations. And so her job is to believe everything the programmers tell her, such as there's no such thing as a cult. You spent the whole summer at the beach with your grandparents. And because if she doesn't believe what the programmers tell her to believe, the goals of presentation programming cannot be met. So she becomes an amnesia controller because she will filter out everything that's not in line with what the programmers want her to believe. She will believe there is no such thing as a cult while forgetting that there is a cult. Now, not everyone has Alice in Wonderland program, as I said, but most cult members will have some kind of a part and program whose job is to believe what the programmers say and to filter out or forget anything that will contradict what they say. Okay. Then the main controllers in Wonderland are created next. Because, and this is important to understand, so how do you motivate the belief part or Alice to do such a psychologically and irrational task? Because they're going to tell her to believe things that aren't true rationally, right? To believe that there's not a cult when the baby has been programmed and knows there is a cult. So how do you get her to do this? Well, what in the Jesuit order, the way they do is they demonstrate to Alice that her needs for attachment and safety will only be met if she believes, and terrible things will happen if she doesn't. So all the main Wonderland controller parts will fill her attachment needs on one side and punish her terribly on the other to maintain this motivation. So all the primary controllers both reward and punish. And the way it was done for me is the father that I loved most growing up, who I saw as a father figure, my primary programmer, when I was little, I was a toddler, told me it was vital that I forget Rome, that I forget the cult. When Alice was in Wonderland or out presenting in another country, because Alice can come out and present, he said, "You have to forget me and the other fathers." I remember it broke my heart. I cried and cried and cried. And I remember saying, "I don't want to forget you." And he said, "If you don't, I'll be in danger because you could expose us." And then they call them traitors or evil people could come and kill me if you don't agree to forget. So finally, and so he'd say, "You don't want me to die, do you, Alice?" And so finally, I agreed. I agreed out of my love for him to forget him and the other people I loved in the order. And so then he said, "I will always see you in Wonderland," because he became my King of Hearts. The King of Hearts was created prenatally too, and he will is always in Wonderland the primary attachment bond for Alice. He's the reason Alice runs her programs. So when she's in Wonderland, she sees the King of Hearts, and that's the person she loves most on earth. She is the reason she runs her Wonderland programs and maintains the amnesia, because her terror is that if she doesn't do her job, he'll disappear or get killed, or evil people will hurt him. And they put the child when they're a bit older, and it's installed to VRs and scenarios where the King of Hearts is killed because Alice failed or he's hurt, but then he's resurrected and she's given a second chance, and she swears, "Oh, I'll never remember again." But the other part of the program, in the way the Jesuits do it, is Alice is allowed out when she's in Rome and she's allowed with a special code to remember the fathers she loves and to spend special time with them. And so when you go back to Rome and you're not in a presentation, he'll call little Alice out, hold her on his lap, and say, "You've been so good, Alice. You've been doing your job so well. And just like I promised, we'll spend time together because you forgot me when you were in Wonderland." And the primary program is also the White Rabbit. So, but another permutation. And the White Rabbit, and then he'll hold up a gold watch and he'll say, "This watch will tell you how long when you go back into Wonderland," because she's crying. She doesn't want to go back. She wants to remember him, you know. And so he'll say, "This watch will tell you how long it will be until you can come out and see me again." So when you're out in, say, the UK presenting, that the White Rabbit, from time to Alice can go anytime and look at the rabbit's watch and see how many days and or weeks it is till she can come and see the person she loves most again. Okay, so Alice is heavily rewarded with these times out where she's praised and gets to spend special time with the father, with her primary programmer, who's her King of Hearts. But then he'll tell her to go inside and she completely forgets again about the cult. And she has to forget because she controls what the presenters remember. If Alice doesn't forget, the presenters won't forget. And because the presenters are split from Alice, that's when you're an infant. The Jesuits do it when you're very tiny during the first few weeks of life. I think Illuminati do it when the infant's older, but they'll split the presenters directly from Alice. And so what she believes, they believe. What she doesn't believe, they won't believe. And Alice is told that the different presentations are her children, and they'll tell her, "Control your children, Alice, and they'll be safe, and you'll be safe, and we'll be safe. If you ever fail to control them, horrible things will happen." I'll talk about that in a little bit. Is this making sense?
Absolutely. Yes, it does make sense. And what I think is just shocking is like how young they start.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they start very young. Oh, yeah, because an infant will believe everything. Remember, this is a belief part that's being told to believe a fantasy. Best time is in the womb and infancy, because a child doesn't have the reality testing that an adult has. You take a child with 5 years experience and they're going to say this is BS. Sorry, but it's true. Okay, whereas these parts are never given the chance to test in the real world. Remember, they're in Wonderland most of the time. Okay, all right. Now Nemosin is Alice's mother in the Jesuit programming, and so Alice is her child who was conceived with the help of the principal deity or spiritual being over the first dimension, which represents Wonderland. And I'm not going to go into all that right now, but that's the belief. Okay, so she's a spiritual child of his name is Droma, and he's over the first dimension, and he and Nemesis have Alice in the storyline. So when Alice is created in the womb, the birth mother plays the role of Alice first to teach the Alice part how to speak and act. So the birth mother will say, I'm Alice. And then the Alice part in the fetus is out. She goes, and so she'll be talking to the white rabbit. Oh, I should follow you everywhere you go and do everything you tell me. Or she'll be talking to, the King of Hearts. Oh, I love you so much. And so she's modeling even in the womb for the Alice part how to act. She's telling her scripts. The other main splits done, and then the storyline then is that the King of Hearts comes to Nemesis, Alice's mother, one day and says, I want to have this wonderful land for a child to live in, but I have no child. What can I do? And in the script, in the Jesuits, Nemesis gives her baby to the King of Hearts. And she says, I'll give you my little girl, Alice. He says, oh, that's wonderful. Then I can create a wonderful land with her to live in. And the script is that together the King of Hearts and Alice use their imaginations to create Wonderland. Okay. But the reality is there's programming studios where the infant is shown what Wonderland looks like. And so the King of Hearts will carry the little baby Alice saying, I love you so much, Alice, and look at the wonderful land we created here. Look at the pretty flowers that can talk and blah, 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 So it's a programming studio, okay? Then the white rabbit is also the primary trainer, and his job, his watch, as I said, reminds Alice of how long the presentation must be out when presenting in a country. But his other job is, because he represents the primary programmer, Alice and Nemesis, when a part is going to present, will go to a part of Wonderland. And I'll describe this later. They will take the presentation part, and the white rabbit will lead them to the rabbit hole, and then the white rabbit will take the presentation part out through the rabbit hole. Okay, and then the presentation parts are in a much younger state when they're in Wonderland inside, but they'll age forward through the rabbit hole, which has a lot of triggers to do so that they're the age of the presentation when they come out. And then the white rabbit takes Alice in the Jesuit order, it's Athena, and she takes the presenters and locks them in the shell, the correct shell for presenting. Now, in Wonderland, another primary controller is the caterpillar. And so she meets him, he's smoking a hookah and all that. In Wonderland, he's seeing a mushroom. But his real job is that if Alice is having bleed through memories or unauthorized memories while she's in her presentation, Alice sits in front of the caterpillar with her back to him, and he'll take his long tentacles and he'll use his legs to stroke through her head, and he'll take away the unauthorized memories for her. So he's a backup to prevent. And then he collects the memories, and then he'll report them to one of the Delta controllers, who then reports to the cult. Oh, she had a bleed through. But his job is to take it away, to take away these unauthorized memories. And then Alice, he'll say, are you feeling better, Alice? After he does this, she's, oh yes, I feel much better. Do you understand that those were just fantasies, Alice, or a dream? And oh yes, so that's the script. The Cheshire Cat is created to be a demon guide to keep Alice on the programming path. So he guides her through the path on Wonderland, which is the programming path. Paths are used a lot, and the paths always represent stay on in your programming, don't go off the path. And so if she tries to go off the path, he'll claw her or he'll whistle for punishers if she starts to veer off or question her programming. And so like one of the punishers is Jabberwocky, and that's a punisher that will swoop down and claw at Alice and bite her and she's screaming and runs and well anyway, and they'll use drones for stuff like that, and they have incredible animatronics for this kind of thing. Now the Mad Hatter is another memory or thought. He's a thought controller and monitor. So when he meets Alice in the program, he'll say, I'm an example of someone who had too many naughty thoughts. They call them naughty thoughts. And so I had to go to the Institute for the Incurably Sane one time too many. And that's for people who have too many naughty thoughts. Naughty thoughts in this program are thoughts that contradict the Wonderland programming, the amnesia programming. Thoughts like, well, I don't believe what they're telling me, or the cold is real, or I hate having to control the presenters. Anytime Alice has any kind of thought or any of her parts have thoughts that contradict her programming, the Mad Hatter will, he'll see her and remind her, remember what happens to people who have too many naughty thoughts. And then he'll show her his hat and he'll say, I put all my naughty thoughts in my hat and they go away. And he says, would you like to try the hat? And so he hands her the hat and she puts it on her head. And when she does, she puts her naughty thoughts in the head, into the hat. It's a collector. It's a containment system for the rebellious or non-script thoughts. Because all kids are going to have thoughts. They're going to say, oh, this is BS. Or, or I have 5 lives in other countries and I know it. Well, that's a naughty thought, So that goes into the hat. Or even the fathers don't really love me or they would make me forget them. Naughty thought, right? So those go into the hat. And then what happens is at the end of the day, Alice gives the hat with all the naughty thoughts to the Mad Hatter. And then he goes and reports them all to the punishment systems and the reprogramming system so that they can address those inside. Now, and they do a scenario too when and it's a VR when Alice is young, she's like 3 years old and it's a hot day and she's sweating because they have an outdoor studio for Wonderland. I'll describe that in a minute. And she wants to take the hat off because it's hot and it's heavy and it's sweaty. And the minute she does, the naughty thoughts come out and start attacking her like knives and, slicing her and she's screaming and running. And then the Mad Hatter comes and says, put the hat on, put it on. So she puts it back on and it all stops. The Dormouse is sleep programming. And its goal is to make the presenters too tired or sleepy to hear any information that contradicts their programming if they're ever in a situation that seems to contradict it. So it's a type of sleep programming. Okay, well, there's studios and setups. So the programming studios have some Wonderland setup. So when the infant is tiny, they go through it. But they also have an outdoor area. It's on a private estate north of Rome, but they also can fly the children. There's a special studio in France where the Jesuits like to use because it's very elaborate with boxwood hedges and stuff like that. But there's also one in Canada. There's one in the US. I mean, most countries have some kind of outdoor studio as well. And when I was a child, it looked like boxwood hedges that surrounded it. And then the hedge is also created like a path or maze through it. And then there were various rooms made within the huge hedge maze that the various rooms also within, okay, made of boxwood, okay. And the hedges represent where the various presentations live. For example, there's a French area of Wonderland, and inside that room, you're going to have the French representatives of your French family and presenters, and they're all speaking French. There's a UK area where everyone is British, or there's a German area where everyone speaks German. The US area, okay. So, And the rules in Wonderland is presenters from various nations are never to interact when they're inside Wonderland. They can only stay inside their room. They have to stay inside their room. And they and their presentation family are watching videos on a screen of their life. Because they believe that those videos are actually their memories of living that presenter's life. So the presenter family and the French presenters, when they're in Wonderland, are watching videos of the French life, going to school, going to work, blah 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 blah. And what they do is the programmers will actually have the French parts and Alice and other parts watch the videos, which probably last 2 hours, and then they replay them over and over again. So the French parts, when they're inside Wonderland, have no idea that there's another part out presenting. They think they've never lost time. Okay. Now, same for the German parts. When a person is out in the US presenting, the German parts are all inside Wonderland with their German family, watching the videos of the memories of the German family and presenter's life. And because when a person has memories, it can look and feel like a video inside. They actually think those are their memories, those videos. When you're overseas, the US presenters are inside watching a video with their presenter families. And that's why then when these presenters come back or called back out, they go through the rabbit hole again or call back out to present through the shell. There's no sense of lost time. So a person will say, well, I never lost a minute. I remember early in my healing, I said, but I've always been this person. I never lost any time. This is why. Okay. Now, when the child is very young, like a toddler, they will say that you're in the French part of Wonderland and they set you inside of it. Well, the first few times you're having this wonderful meal with your family and you're being praised and loved and it's all wonderful. And as they're installing it, it's always good memories first. But then at some point, and the white rabbit usually stays to keep the child in there, But at some point, the child is told to go into the French presenter is told to go into French Wonderland. Now, and maybe they're by themselves for a while and they've got some books. And the child gets bored after an hour or two and wants to toddle out. So she'll toddle out and she'll go and she'll hear a child speaking German walk by her room. And she's curious. So she'll go outside and she'll look at the little German child and she'll say, who are you? And even though they're speaking different languages, the other child will walk towards her German family. The child follows them, and then all the German parts start beating up on the French child. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Get away, get away, get away. We hate you. What are you doing here? And the child runs screaming, and then the Jabberwocky is coming in and trying to get her, and Tweedledee and Tweedledum, who are punishers, find her and they're trying to rape her. And so she'll scream for help. And then the King of Hearts and the White Rabbit will show up and they'll say, child, why did you leave your part of Wonderland? We told you to never leave. It was to protect you. And the reason they do that is because it would be normal otherwise for different presenters to want to peek in on each other. Or let's say that you're out in Germany presenting. It'd be normal for the UK presenter to want to peek out and hear what's going on in Germany. This is to prevent that. So the rule is you never leave your part of Wonderland unless you are brought out by the White Rabbit to present. Okay. Well, I mentioned Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They will beat and rape children. They're disobedient. The Jabberwocky swoops down, and things like that. So, the tea party. I'm going to talk about that. Nemus, when the child is very young, will take Alice into a room at a table that's set for tea. But in the Jesuit programming, when she goes and she'll say, Alice, let's go have tea. I know how much you love tea. So she goes to the tea party, but when she gets there, the chairs are all filled with the dead bodies of people that she loves, her primary programmers. Now, these are mannequins, but she doesn't know that, killed in gruesome, bloody ways. Okay, so they'll have their heads off or a gash through their chest and blood pouring, and so Alice will start screaming, and Nemesis will turn to her and say, Alice, what's wrong? And she'll say, look at the fathers, look at them in the chairs. Oh, and Nemesis will say, Alice, there's nothing there. Stop making these things up. I'm talking like Nemesis, there's nothing there. Why do you believe these terrible fantasies? Because remember, Nemesis controls Alice too. And she helps Alice to believe and to know what to believe and not. That's her job too. And then Alice, so she says, sit down and have some tea, dear, and you'll feel better. So Nemesis calmly sits down. The child is shaking, and they'll sit down in the chair. And Nemesis is pouring the tea, which has a little bit of a sedative too. And calmly gives her a cookie. And then she'll say, there's nothing there now. And she says, come down, because the child is still shaking, and enjoy your tea with me, and I'll help you feel better. And she'll say, Alice, you mustn't believe your fantasies. Because again, they don't want the child to remember any violent things that they've seen in the cult. So this is reinforcing this. So Alice will gradually have tea and cookies while Nemesis is chatting calm with her, saying, oh, do you remember when we went to the beach the other day, and she acts like nothing's wrong. And as she's talking, and she'll say, Alice, quit looking at the chairs, look at me. Quit looking at the chairs, look at me. And so finally Alice she'll turn around, she'll say, look at me and not at the chairs. So Alice will turn around, look at the chairs, and the studio dims. And then she says, that's right, Alice. And she says, if you believe me, everything will be okay. If you never disobey me, everything is okay. And then the lights turn up again, and Alice turns around, and to her amazement, the chairs are empty. Because while she's turned around looking at Nemesis and the studio darkens, they remove the mannequins. And so then Alice says, they're gone. And Nemesis says, child, there was never anything there all along. And she reminds her, put those fantasies out of your head or people will think you're crazy. And Alice is programmed to always believe Nemesis and to mistrust her own perceptions of reality. And that's the goal of this. Alice's job is not to believe what she sees, hears, and feels, but to believe what she's told to believe. And by the way, I'm sorry if some of what I'm saying is triggering, and you should probably put a trigger alert at the beginning of the program because of your show here, because I don't know how to describe the Alice programming without sharing some of the scripts they use, though, because it's just unreal. Now, there's a punishment that they sometimes use if presenters have too many quote unquote naughty thoughts, or if Alice in any way fails in her job or the parts. And it's this croquet game that's overseen. The Queen of Hearts, her job is to always protect the King of Hearts. So she'll always constantly remind Alice of what she's supposed to do to protect him, which is to obey her programming. But to punish the presenters and Alice, they will sometimes have a gruesome croquet game where they use the heads chopped off of people as the balls, and the bodies are put in a V shape as the wickets. And that's a reminder. And the heads, of course, are mannequins, but they look like the heads of loved ones, the presenter families, depending on which presenter failed to believe the nonsense that Alice is told to believe. And it's a threat. This could happen if you keep failing in your beliefs. Okay. I've been going through a lot, I know, pretty rapidly, but there's Alice in Wonderland is a pretty complex program in the Jesuit order. Now, there's always the threat to the presenters. If you remember, your family will die. They're always told that. And when you're little, they put Alice and all the presenters through VRs in which their families are killed horribly in a fire or by drowning. They use the elements a lot, or by earthquake or tornado. They do all kinds of stuff. And so their deep belief too is, well, if I remember, my presenter family will die. So if the German presenters fail or break programming, their belief is their family in Germany will die, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now in the Jesuit order, the presenters will give their memories to a controller, which in the Jesuits is Andromeda. And then she gives those memories to the Delta system, who will then store any of the memories that might be considered higher security than just normal day-to-day life. Okay. The shell is allowed to retain the normal day-to-day life memories. I got up in the morning, I had a cup of coffee. That's okay. I saw a cult chalice in my living room. That goes immediately through Andromeda to the deltas. And so the presenter never remembers. Okay, they're not allowed to keep that memory. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to Crazy Alice programming, if that's okay. And this is a punishment sequence if Wonderland or Alice fail in any way to run their programs. And it's also considered part of the retuning and reprogramming in the Jesuit systems. Crazy, if Alice has too many naughty memories, quote unquote, or too many naughty thoughts, or her systems are failing, then in the programming sequence, she goes to the Institute for the Incurably Sane. And when I was a child, it looked like they did in France, but they have this in many countries. Okay, it's not just in France, and a lot of the bigger reprogramming centers have a setup within like it too. But it looks just like one of those insane asylums from the 1700s, where the people are chained up and they're nuts, and so the Mad Hatter and the White Rabbit and will take Alice to the institute where she's chained to the wall, like the other inmates. And while she's there, the other inmates will revile her and curse her and throw excrement and urine on her, And Alice is raped by the staff, okay, and treated horribly. And then the doctors come in, and the head doctor is always the primary programmer, okay, and the staff. And they come in and they go, "Oh, Alice, you're very, very ill. You've been believing your fantasies." Okay. And then he says, I have prescribed a special course of treatment for you for your illness, because in the cult script, illness is considered having any memories of the cult or questioning your programming. And they actually they do consider a form of mental illness because the person is not believing the things they're told. So the special treatments include electroshock, or lowering Alice into a pit filled with rats, or leeches, or being put in a pit full of bugs and being raped. Okay, so it's horrible. And part of this, though, too, is that if later in life is to also program the person that if they ever seek inpatient help for, mental symptoms, they're only to go to authorized facilities. If they don't, they're told they won't believe her, and they'll treat her like she's psychotic, and they'll treat her in the way she's treated in the sequence, which is not true, but that's what you're told. Which is why the first time I went inpatient in an unauthorized facility years ago, I was terrified, and I didn't know why at the time. I hadn't remembered any of this. Now, Crazy Alice has only one little friend, and that's Fufu, and that's her little toy rabbit. But Fufu is her friend, and she talks to Fufu. But in one of the programming sequences, Fufu comes up live at night and rapes her. And the next morning, the staff will come around. They say, "Alice, how did you sleep?" And she'll say, "Fufu hurt me. He raped me." And they'll look at, and they'll pick up the toy and they'll say, "But it's just a toy rabbit. Alice, you're still sick. You still need help." Well, she doesn't want to hear, because I just told you what help there is. Okay. And so they'll say, "Stop believing these terrible delusions, Alice, And so eventually they'll come around, let's say, after it's several days. It's only for a day when you're younger. It gets longer when you're older. They reinforce this over the years. And they'll say, "Alice, are you ready to stop believing your crazy memories, your delusions?" And she'll say, "Oh, yes," because she'll do anything to get out of that place. And so, she makes a vow. And then in the Jesuit order, they say, "Then will you ask the spirit to help you stop remembering things that couldn't possibly be true?" And she says, "Oh, yes." And so she'll do a ritual and invite a demon in, and it helps to reinforce her amnesia, regarding cult things. So that's crazy Alice programming. And when I got in touch with that, that was about 10 years ago. I want to tell you, it was horrible going through the memories of the treatments and the threats and all that. It was intense. But it helped me understand why I was always afraid deep down that if I ever really remembered the cult, I always thought I would go insane. And it's because Crazy Alice, who acts insane at times, is supposed to come forward and act nuts. Because then you're supposed to be carted off to a reprogramming center, right? To get help. So my deep fear that I would go psychotic or insane if I remember my cult memories was partially rooted in my Crazy Alice programming. Because that program, its goal is to tell presenters, if you remember your cult history, this will happen to you. No one will believe you. Remember, the doctors don't believe her when she tells them about her memories, and you'll be punished. All right, Black Alice programming is the third part of Alice programming. There's a part inside called Black Alice, and these two are split from the main Alice, and she has a rabbit too, and his name is Edward. And this is a threat program, and the threat is that if the presentation programs ever fail, Black Alice will come out and kill everyone they love, because Black Alice is programmed from early infancy to be only abused by human beings, to be tortured, raped, and hurt. So she hates all humans with a murderous rage, with an unstoppable rage. So Black Alice remembers being abused. And the only comfort that she gets is from her little black rabbit, Edward, and the demons who tell her that one day she can get revenge on them all. Those are her only friend and comfort. And let me tell you, when the programmers are working with a child on Black Alice, sometimes it's scary for them, because this is a murderous child who really will lunge at the trainers too and others, unless the halt code is given and things like that. So then the presenters are put through VRs in which they have unauthorized memories, and then Black Alice comes out and kills their families, and then the heartbroken child comes back. The presenter comes back out, is looking at heartbroken at the dead family, and then they're told, "Well, you remembered," and that brought Black Alice out. And so then the child vows, the presenter and the White Alice and all the others vow to never remember again. And then they're given a second chance. The demonic brings the families alive, supposedly in the VR, and then they thank and praise the child for making their vow to never remember. So that is Alice in Wonderland programming.
Is this one of the first programs that will present itself? I know you said it's like the presenter part, but this one, from what I understand, from what you're saying, this program activates very quickly as the survivor starts to recall memories, probably quicker than any other system, correct?
Oh yeah. Oh, the punishments, the terrors. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because remember, Alice controls the presenter. So when a person first enters therapy as a presenter, if they have this, they'll have no idea they have all this inside. And so they'll go and they'll try to work in therapy, and they'll tell their therapist maybe a memory. And then they'll go home and they will sometimes panic and feel like they're going insane, And this is part of what's going on right here. It's an immediate punishment sequence if the presenters remember. Because Alice, believes that if the presenters remember, the King of Hearts dies or is threatened, the person she loves most on earth. And the presenters have no idea that they've ever been programmed or had someone they loved in the group, someone they would be willing to lay their life down for. So the Alice controller is very committed to stopping the presenters from remembering, because she thinks that threatens the people she loves. But this is sometimes the last program that people work through because it's hard to work through your own programming. It's one thing to hear a back part say, "Oh, I'm a cult member and I did this and this." Great, that's you. But when it's your own programming and agreements, it's really hard to remember.
And that's sort of along the lines of what I was just going to ask for people, whether it's a therapist or whether it is a survivor that goes through it. What do you have any advice for sort of a course of action to take in that moment, to sort of help control the system as it's starting to break?
Yeah, or to go through this. One thing, it helps to be aware that there's this programming inside. And one thing that can help is if the person is in a place of physical safety, is to reassure them, I know you're afraid that if you remember bad things will happen, but it's possible you were lied to. Now you can't promise that no one they love would ever get hurt if they remember. That's not realistic. But what you can say, we don't know what will happen to the people you love, but here's what I do know. You're not remembering isn't going to rescue them. And it's okay to remember. We're not going to do any of the things and you might say, what are you afraid of would happen if you remember? I remember I asked my parts that early on in my healing, they said they will go crazy, that will go psychotic. Okay, help me understand. What makes you think that we would go psychotic? Because I did. And then they started sharing about so sometimes just asking questions of, what are you afraid will happen if you remember? Because this panic is coming from some kind of fear in there. But let them tell you, you can't bring them through. Knowing that Alice programming exists doesn't mean you can bring a person through it in a few days. They have to be ready to. So at first establish a communication inside. Or you can say, I want you to know I'm here with you as you're feeling these feelings. You're not alone in them. I know that in the past you were left alone in this terror, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here with you. If you can do that honestly and be there for them. So sometimes just being present while they're feeling and sharing can do quite a bit. And the person is not going to sit there and say, oh, why have Alice parts? What they're going to say is, I am terrified to death that this horrible thing, I don't know what it is going to happen if I remember. And then it's okay to say, well, let's sit here together with that feeling and see if that feeling can share anything about where it's coming from or what you think could happen. That's what I found helpful for me, is when either I or someone I care about could sit with me when I was going through the feelings. Even though and by the way, because there's different types of Alice programming, don't assume the person has everything I described today or that's the same. They may have something very different running inside. And I do know that in younger survivors, Frozen is replacing Wonderland as a presentation program as well in the last 20 years. So if a person is very young, they may not even have traditional Alice. But just being present, just saying and letting them share. If the panic feels overwhelming, teaching them ways to contain panic. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm overwhelmed and I need a way to contain my panic for a moment. And so maybe say, okay, everyone inside, I know you're terrified, because we're remembering things we were told not to. It's okay now, though, for us to choose to put some of this terror temporarily for a few hours into a container, and then we'll bring it back out. You don't lock it away forever. That's abusing your parts, and it doesn't work. But you can say, let's contain it. Or grounding techniques. I had to, when I was first remembering my crazy Alice, I had to use grounding. I had to hold the table and say, I'm not going psychotic. This is a memory. And I'm telling you what I did. And most memories and feelings like this will only last for 2 days or 3 days, and then they tend to de-escalate. So I can survive this. I survived the original programming. I can survive remembering. And then I would say to every part inside, everybody join with me and help us through this together. I can't do this alone. Because you don't ask, by the way, you don't work on any of this stuff before you've got a little cooperation inside, hopefully, because you want all of your parts helping the presenters through this and the Alice parts through it. And then as the person is working through some of this, then maybe they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm homicidal. I'm going to kill everyone, because I'm remembering too much." Same thing. The first thing you do is make sure there's no sharp objects nearby. I'm serious. I had to have my friends lock up my knives for a few days when I got in touch with Black Alice. I'm being real here. And then they sat with me and they weren't afraid. And I said, "But what if I kill you?" And they said, "I don't believe you will, because I believe that there are other parts in there that don't want to do that, and they can help you." And so I did a lot of prayer, lots of prayer too. And I said, "Jesus, help me not to become a homicidal maniac, please." I'm telling you what my actual prayer was. Help. The best prayer sometimes is help, not a long drawn out thing. And I was commanding the demonic to leave, because to me, Black Alice looked like a demon. Well, she was like, but then I commanded the demonic to go. But then I was looking at her, and I saw she's just a little kid that just been so hurt. And so then, for me, sometimes when I hold the hands apart, I get their memories. I was getting flooded with her abuse memories, and I was feeling the rage she felt. I said, "I want to share with you some of my memories. People can be different than you remember." Mm-hmm. So I tried to share with her my memories of people that have been kind to me in my life. And I said, "I understand why you hate people, but not all human beings treat everyone that way all the time." And so that helped too, to share, to balance it out a little bit, because when a part like that comes forward full force, they're going to be really strong in their feelings. And I did tell myself, I'll probably only be homicidal a few days, and then as she's out, I will start to feel more normal. And I did, but it took time. And I'm not trying to say how awful it is, but I'm saying it's intense when you first start working on this kind of stuff. But once you do, then reality starts coming. And by that, I don't mean the programmed awful stark reality they tell you that will happen if you remember your past, which is another whole other program linked to Alice. That's a lie. But I mean, you get to know what's true and what's not. And then the rage comes, because then you realize, oh my gosh, they fed me a bunch of crap my whole life. And I'm going to be honest, I said, I hate those MFers. I hate them. I hate them. They lied to me. They lied to me. They used my love against me to get me to believe their BS. And that's part of healing too, is acknowledging how you feel. Realizing that you were manipulated by people who said they loved you, and it was all to cover their butts, to cover their criminal activities. That they used my toddler love and said, "If you love me, you'll forget," to cover their abuse and criminal activities. And because I love so much, I agreed to be put through this hell and to believe their lies and to forget them so that they would be protected. So as you work through it, then some of the you'll feel both love and hate, probably people will, for their programmers. And that's called ambivalence, which is a part of healing. Dissociation is meant to take away ambivalence, so you feel pure love or pure hate. But then you're going to feeling the same at the same time for that person that you thought was the most wonderful person on earth, who your life revolved around your time with them. You're always in that most wonderful person on earth manipulated you. And with that happy reality, but yet I would rather know the truth and know that they were liars, even though it hurts, than to keep believing the lie.
Absolutely. That's all really good tips. I'm sure in the moment extremely difficult to be able to do some of those things, but to, I think, have on the table to just do them despite how you
Yeah.
feel, it can be really calming, just, even if it's just self-reassurance. I think that that's hard to do in those moments. We don't naturally think to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where having a support person or a friend with a clue is really helpful. Really, really, really helpful if possible. And I know that's not always possible for all survivors. Sometimes I'm going to suggest if a survivor is living all alone and has no support, that's not the time to try to tackle something like this on their own. They might, in therapy, when they can get it, if they can get it, start looking at some of it slowly, but that's where slow is good. If a person is in a safe and supportive environment, or they have friends that have a clue, then it's easier because, like I mentioned, you can tell someone, hey, I'm working on something. I'm feeling really unstable. Can you hang with me for a while? I'm working through something. Can I talk to you about how I feel?
well, thank you for all of this. You balance the dark with the light by being able to express the darkness, but you've come just such a tremendous way yourself on healing and what you've learned from that, and to be able to shine a light on that too is just amazing. You always have the best presentations and such an eloquent and delicate and palatable way of presenting information that's so complex for most people to even comprehend or understand. But I mean, especially for survivors, it's so important that they get to know themselves. And I know this in particular, Alice in Wonderland, you can go look it up online. It's very difficult to find any information on it, honestly, besides some of your work, Svali, that's published out there. And even that can be hard to search sometimes. And I'm sure it's been
Yeah.
wiped off
Yeah.
different websites and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you coming on today and presenting on
Thank
this.
you. I just wish there were more support people out there for survivors trying to work through stuff who could be that person to hear, who could, I think we've talked about that last time. That is the greatest need for survivors. I feel fortunate that I've had three good friends in my life who've been that for me at various times in my life. And that's made all the difference. I wish I could bless every survivor that is working on their stuff with that themselves. My greatest grief is there's not enough support often, and I wish that there was. I wish there was. I wish there was a willingness to be safe support. But here's the issue then. How do you know who's safe and who's not? Who's because a lot of times the people are, oh, I'll be support, well, yeah. And you're in the cult, and I'll be support, and you're in the cult and then not. Yeah, okay. So that brings that whole issue up too. And I know that. But I do, with all my heart, wish there is more honest, real, non-cult, non-dissociative support for survivors who are trying to work through things.
And I get
And
people all the time that ask what they can do, and that's something really simple.
yeah, just you don't have to be a therapist to listen to someone and say, if you need to cry or get angry, I'm here. Just don't hurt me. And so, but most survivors aren't going to. But like, here's a wiffle bat you can hit against the bed, and I'll be here at a safe distance away while you share how you feel. I'm not going to run from you because you're having difficult emotions. Or the person is crying their heart out, and just to sit next to them. And the hardest thing is to sit with someone and not fix. It's like they're crying their heart and they go, oh, there, which you will do. But then, you know, um, just to be able to sit while they cry and let them process how they feel without rushing in with the fix, I think is the most valuable gift a person can give. And that's why you don't need to be a therapist to sit with someone. You just need to be someone who can sit with that person while they're feeling. Panic is hard to deal with because when someone's panicked, our brains tend to panic as well. And it can be really hard to sit with someone who's saying, "Oh my God," but just saying, I know you're scared. I understand that. I understand that what you're doing feels scary, but I want you to just take a deep breath and let it out slowly. You can teach people grounding techniques if they don't know them. Take my hand. I'm here with you. You're not alone in this anymore. I think any supporter, any friend, if they have any capacity to do that, that's so helpful. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. I always love hearing these tips. You have so many of them. And it seems like for, really any situation, that can be just a really great tip. And it's so easy. And I don't think people think of it. It's just listen, we do want to
Yeah.
fix naturally. And sometimes that's not comforting for somebody who, is going through something. They just want a presence and love and somebody to just be sitting there for them,
Oh,
so
yeah.
thank you for these gentle reminders, and then also, helping survivors who may be listening going through this, and therapists understand some of the deeper nuances of, what they can do to be proactive and to be a good support for somebody who's going through this. And you're right, there's not enough on, on either end, whether it's therapeutically or just in society in general. Uh,
Yeah.
Part of it is obviously the lack of people not knowing that this stuff even exists, but it's even people who do know or who have an inkling that it is still will look away and, won't partake in supporting. So I think that's just overall, like, I completely agree with you. We just need to be an army for survivors and to let them know that they have safe spaces, whether it's them listening to us, them disclosing publicly, whatever it is. I think more would come forward and we'd have more genuine conversations and more healing if we invited those conversations in willingly and didn't
Yeah.
just, push those things away and not look at them and keep everything so surface level with people in our own lives. So thank you so much, Svali, for coming on and for educating us on this topic that, like I said, is very difficult to find comprehensive information on.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for having me, Emma. I really appreciate what you do for survivors too. Thank you so much.
It's my honor. And do you want to remind everybody where they can get all your books and what your blog is so people can go check you out real quick before we tie it up for today?
Okay. Because they're on Amazon, if you go to Amazon and just type in Svali, my books will come up. And my blog is swallyspeaksagain.wordpress.com. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, I'll have those in the show notes. I encourage you guys to go support Svali's work if you aren't already. I know many of you do. She did just come out with a second book, so if you didn't know that and you guys got the first one, go grab the second one. And she just announced today, like you guys heard, there'll be a third at least, so we'll get some more of her testimony as well. I'll have her playlist in the show notes if you guys want to go catch up on other episodes. I encourage you guys to go watch other episodes she does on other platforms too, which she usually posts on her blog. So another good incentive to go read what she does, because she sort of keeps up with her day to day on there too if she's on programs and doing podcasts. So go support her work, you guys. I'll have all my links in the show notes as well. Follow me on any platforms that you guys are able to. We appreciate you guys so much. We could not do this without you. You guys are the ones that help share this and are getting it out there so other people can learn, and day by day, one testimony at a time, we're setting captives free. So thank you guys on the other end for listening and supporting. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.